Hi everyone, welcome to Newcastle Fans TV. I'm Will Dixon and this is my video talking about how Newcastle's rivals have strengthened in the January transfer window. I'll also touch upon Newcastle. I'm going to go over the teams from about Bournemouth down. It's very, very close and anything could happen, but this is my thoughts on what's been going on. So we'll start off with Bournemouth. They didn't actually bring anyone in the January transfer window. The only significant departure was Benik Afobe going on loan to Wolves because he has been playing for them a bit. But still, they have a really good squad, and their manager, Eddie Howe, is very highly rated. They proved that with a 3-0 win at Stamford Bridge over Chelsea, which is a fantastic result for them, unbelievable result, in fact. And they're just generally a good team, and they've just got some really good players, so I think they will be fine. Moving on to Watford, they've got the new manager in, which, after they dropped Marcus Silva after a crazy drop in form, after he was linked to the Everton job. Whether that's the right decision or not, I'm still not so sure. I think Marcus Silva is a great manager, and I rate him very, very highly. I said that in the summer that if Rafa was to walk, he'd be the one that's I would want to bring in. But new guys come in. They made a few signings. Probably most notably is Gerard Deulofeu from Barcelona, coming in on loan, who is a very, very good player, but he is very, very inconsistent. A notable other addition is Didier Ndong coming in on loan from Sunderland. Give them a bit of backup. I think with Watford, the potential is there for them to continue to keep going down and keep dropping, but they do have some really good players in their squad. I rate Andre Gray, Richarlison, Decore as well, just to name a few. So I think overall, I think they will be fine, but only time will tell. We haven't had too much with their new manager in. Next, moving on to West Ham. Now, I think West Ham had a really, really poor window, and they're a really inconsistent team. You know, one week they beat Huddersfield, I think 4-1, and then they lost to Wigan in the FA Cup. For me, I think they got weaker in the transfer window. They did bring in João Mario from Inter Milan. He wasn't their first choice, though. I think it was well covered that they did want Jonjo Shelvey. But then they let go of Andre Ayew, and of all the teams, let him go to Swansea, a rival. And they also let go of Diafra Sakho, which really weakened their options. And the striker that they brought in was Jordan Hugill, who played for Preston last season. Some of you might remember him. And they definitely didn't get the targets that they originally wanted. Stories are coming out about they wanted Islam Slimani, which obviously we got. But due to a spat between Karen Brady and the chairman of Leicester, that didn't happen. So West Ham, they've got great players. You know, it can't be denied. Players like Javier Hernandez, Marco Arnautovic, Manuel Lanzini in particular. I like Pedro Obiang as well. They are good players, but I think much like Watford, they have the potential just to completely plummet and put a losing run together. So it remains to be seen, but with the quality in their squad, I think in the end they should be alright. Crystal Palace, wow, what a turnaround they've had. Start of the season, I think it was 8 games that they didn't score or get a win. Roy Hodgson's come in and they've been much improved. You know, they haven't been world beaters, but they have improved massively. And like West Ham and also like Watford, they've got some very, very good talent in their squad. Benteke, Zaha, Townsend, Mamadou Sakho as well. In terms of the January transfer window, they really didn't bring anyone of note in. They did bring in players. I've got Jacques Sorloff and Rakip. Might pronounce them wrong. They're relatively unknown players. No one really knows how they're going to fare. They had a bit of depth to the squad. A squad that is very heavily injury ridden. Especially with us playing them at the weekend. They also didn't get the first choice target. I think his name is Amadou from Lille. Didn't come in either. So it wasn't the most successful window for Crystal Palace, but as I said before, they have got good quality. They look really organised under Roy Hodgson. There are worse teams than them for me personally to go down. So again, I think that'll be fine. Moving on to us, Newcastle United. An interesting transfer window. Takeover aside, 3 players came in: Kennedy, Slimani and Dubravka. Kennedy, we've already seen against Burnley, looks really, really good. He also gives us a bit of versatility. Dubravka, we finally got the goalkeeper that Rafa wanted in. Well, maybe he wasn't the goalkeeper, but we finally got a goalkeeper that maybe Rafa would prefer to play. Someone who regarded himself as playing more with the ball at his feet. 29 years old. It seems though that he is definitely in contention to start against Crystal Palace, and maybe for the rest of the season. And maybe, because we've chopped and changed between Elliott and Darlow, maybe now that Rafa has his man, if you like, we'll have a consistent number one, which can always boost us. The striker thing, Jorgensen didn't happen for me. I was disappointed with that. Maybe it was a bit because to have a record signing come in is a massive boost to the club, and seeing the beeline from that was, I think they asked for just over 20 million, and it was said that it was too much of a gamble to pay that amount of money for him to come in. But for me, it was a much bigger one to bring no one in. And deadline day for me was so relieving to see that we actually did get someone in Islam Slimani. Again, don't get me wrong, I would prefer Daniel Sturridge. I think Sturridge is a great player, he's great quality. But Slimani, I think, is an upgrade on what we've got. No disrespect to the strikers that we have. Hold the ball up strong. I think he'll work better in a system, particularly where we've got, particularly where we use wings quite a lot and try and cross the ball in. I think he'll be a really good addition to us. I think he can get us the goals that we need. We let go of a few players on loan: Mitrovic, Aarons, Woodman, Save, and Kolbach. To be honest, they really weren't getting a lot of game time. I think the only one there you can really pinpoint maybe is Save, because he's played a few games recently. But I think we've got good depth in the midfield. Well, we do have some good players, don't get me wrong. Mitrovic, it's sad to see him go to Fulham of all places, but hopefully he can find a bit of form. We'll have to see how it does in the summer, but his career is looking pretty much over. Next, moving on to Brighton. So they broke their transfer record with Lockyer, and they also brought in Leonardo Ajo. They brought him back to the club from Leicester. And for me, Brighton's main problem was the lack of goal scorers. They had Glenn Murray, who has come up with a few goals this season, but they still, for me, were lacking a proper goal scorer. Maybe they have that in Lockyer. Ajoa does seem to score Premier League goals, so I think they're good signings for them. Chris Hughton, he has them really organised. They look a solid unit, and they have throughout the season. I can't really remember a game where they've been bad, maybe apart from when they lost at home to Liverpool, about 5-1 or something. But I think they'll be alright. They've looked pretty solid, and at least they have options there now. Moving on to Stoke. Under Mark Hughes, they were in complete disarray, and they looked fairly certain for the drop. Paul Lambert's come in, and they've given them a bit of a new lease of life, despite early scepticism about him coming in, I think it will fall off a bit. But they have brought in a few players. They brought in Bauer, Staphylidis, which addresses a weakness in their squad in terms of the fullbacks. They've also strengthened the midfield as well with Ndiaye that they brought in for 15 million quid. But for me, Stoke didn't improve the strikers, and that's again where their main problems lie. They've got Berahino, Crouch, Diouf, Choupo-Moting, who they haven't got a lot of goals between them. I don't think Berahino still hasn't scored for Stoke. So I feel that they really should have brought in a striker. Will they survive? Again, I think they'll be very touch and go. Moving on to Huddersfield. They had a great start to the season, and everyone was thinking they could really do something, but they seem to have fallen off a bit, and they're now right in the thick of it. They've signed in January Congolo and Alex Pritchard, so it adds depth to the squad. It gives them a couple more options, but again, nothing too spectacular. Their top goal scorer is Depotre with 5, and it shows that I think they really should have again gone for a striker. Strikers are they're high in demand and very few and far between to get a good one in. So it's strange for me to see why they didn't at least try. They have got Munier. Any one of them could come good, but they seem to be whittling away. They haven't won in a while, I don't think. So for me, Huddersfield are my first tip to go down the list so far. Moving on to Southampton now. For me, they had an absolutely awful window, potentially the worst one. They lost Virgil van Dijk to Liverpool for a huge fee, but they didn't even seem to replace him. They brought in Carrillo from Monaco for nearly £20 million. But for me, they didn't even reinvest in a centre-back to replace Van Dijk. And they've only scored 25 goals, and they haven't won in 13 games. It's a horrible run that they're on. And for me, they just don't look a very inspiring team. Carrillo, will he do well? Will he do not? It's unknown. But for me, I think Southampton could be a real surprise team to go down, and I think they will. Moving on to Swansea. Now, they've had a complete revitalisation under Carlos Carvalhal. and they've had a great window. They brought in Andre Ayew to pair him up with his brother, and they now have some really good striking options with those two, Tammy Abraham, Wilfred Bonney as well. They also brought in Andy King from Leicester, which will shore up the midfield. Renato Sanchez hasn't really done it, so they've got a good backup or first team starter to replace him if needs be. They've done a big turnaround. They've had recent wins over Liverpool and Arsenal as well. I think Swansea, they're looking much better for survival now, and I think they will. Out of all these teams, they're looking a lot stronger. And finally, we move on to West Brom, the team that stole Daniel Sturridge from us. All that side, it's a great signing for them and for Alan Pardew, because their striking options are so bare. Jay Rodriguez, Salman Rongdon. They've got a few goals, but nothing really to shout about. They didn't win. They hadn't won since August until they beat Brighton very recently in the Premier League. So that shows that's how bad it has been for them. They also brought in Garba, another Egyptian centre back to partner with Hegazi. But probably most importantly, they kept hold of Johnny Evans, which for them is a massive boost for them. He's a massive player for them. But I just don't think they've got enough. I really don't. And despite Sturridge, I think they'll get a few goals for them, but they haven't put a run together, and I think West Brom will go down. So just as a recap, my three teams currently, straight after the January transfer window to go down, would be West Brom, Southampton and Huddersfield. For Newcastle, I think we'll finish about 15th. I think there are worse teams than us. I think we'll finish above Stoke. I think we'll finish above the three that I've just said. And then I think we could finish above like a Brighton or a Swansea or someone like that. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. What do you think of our transfer window in comparison to anybody else? Where will we finish in the league? How many goals will Slimani get? Do you have our goalkeeper? All that good stuff. And hope you enjoyed the video. I've been Will Dixon. This has been Newcastle Fans TV. Bye-bye.